Carolina looking for their 15th straight win in this series. And as we talk top storylines, our official preview for South Carolina and Vanderbilt, that is where we begin. The streak, 14 straight wins. Carolina going for their 15th. And guys, South Carolina at some point is going to lose to Vanderbilt again, right? Like, it's going to happen. Is it going to be this year? I certainly hope not, and I tend not to think so. But it is going to happen at some point. And when it does, it's going to be a pretty big upset, I would say. It's going to be surprising. It's going to be hard to fathom. But what makes the streak so interesting, guys, and I think, you know, there's some stuff off the field. There's some numbers going into games that I think that there's too much that gets made of it, right? That it really doesn't matter. Once toe meets leather, you know, it's more so for us to talk about and conversate and use in our discussions versus anything that actually matters on the field of play. But something like this, you know, it kind of reminds me of Tennessee's struggles in Gainesville, right? Where it's just like there's this mental block that when they play in the swamp, Tennessee just forgets how to play football. Death, taxes, and South Carolina beating Vanderbilt. Like, it does not matter how good or bad South Carolina or Vandy are. I mean, we've seen some really, and I mean really bad Gamecock football teams take down Vanderbilt, right? And we've seen some really good Vandy football teams lose to South Carolina, right? You think about the James Franklin era. How did they not beat Carolina once in that era? You think about 2015. South Carolina, that was the game following Steve Spurrier's resignation. Sean Elliott led the Gamecocks to a win at Williams-Brice Stadium over Vandy. Guys, you think about 2016. You think about 2020. You think about 2019. You think about 2021. The last time Vandy came to Williams-Brice Stadium, a 1-point win. And a game that by far Vandy's best chance in those 14 years to snap the streak. Thank you, Zeb Nolan, for saving the day. So I think South Carolina in this series, in this game specifically, has that mental edge because of the streak, and we'll see if Carolina can make it 15 straight wins, which, again, when you think about the ups, the downs, the changing of coaches of Gamecocks football, it's somewhat astonishing, especially when you think, too, guys, like there's been a 5 or 6 game losing streak to Kentucky in that time. There's been a 5-game losing streak to Missouri. There's been upsets left and right, but one thing that has stood the test of time is South Carolina beating Vandy. Now, this year's matchup, guys, just call it for what it is. It truly is the battle of the bottom of the barrel in the SEC. South Carolina and Vandy rank near the bottom in most major categories, and these are, guys, efficiency ratings that our good friend Michael Bratton, a.k.a. SEC Mike, posted on social media. Again, these are efficiency ratings. Vanderbilt's rush offense ranked number 111, going up against South Carolina's rush defense, ranked 92nd. South Carolina's rush offense ranked 97th. Vanderbilt's rush defense ranked 108th. Also, Vanderbilt's pass defense ranked number 114. South Carolina's pass defense ranked number 116. So, you can call it the battle of mid. You can call it the battle to stay out of the cellar. Whatever you want to describe it, it's an unstoppable force against an immovable object, and something has to give on Saturday. Now, guys, we've all probably seen the weather report by now. Going to be cold, going to be rainy. How does weather play a factor in this football game? Guys, I saw one guy on social media comparing the weather in this one. He said that it's going to resemble the 2018 Akron game. For those of you that remember that football game, it was cold, it was wet, it was just a sloppy day. And, you know, in a game like this, where it feels like South Carolina, the 2-touchdown favorite, right? It feels like they should have the advantage. You know, listen, you get a wet football, you get some cold conditions, you get kind of an ominous day. We've seen crazier things happen, right? So how does weather play a factor? Does it play a factor at all in this football game? We shall see. Now, guys, on the field, I go first directly to QB1 and Spencer Rattler. Does Spencer Rattler stay hot at home, because I think the only way that South Carolina, that something goes awry, and that if you see this game close in the fourth quarter, or God forbid Vanderbilt with a lead, it's because Spencer Rattler was off. It's because Spencer Rattler basically imploded, did not have a good day, which would go against everything that he has done at home to this point. The guy has been absolutely brilliant at Williams-Brice Stadium. It's got us questioning, is there something in the water at Willie B, right? Like, is there something he's doing at home that's not happening on the road? Granted, you look at the competition, Vanderbilt is much, much more like the competition they faced at home versus on the road, where they face some really high-quality defenses. Okay, Vandy, again, bringing in the number 114 ranked defense, pass defense, I should say, in regards to efficiency ratings. Spencer Rattler should have the opportunity to feast on that group. So, can Spencer Rattler stay hot? If he does that, I think it should be a really fun offensive day for South Carolina. But if not, if something goes awry and, God forbid he's under pressure and is forcing the football, and, we see more of the same of last week, a couple of underthrown balls, and, he wasn't perfect last week against JSU. If we see more of that, all of a sudden, I think that's something that could lead to a closer than expected ball game at Willie B. Guys, something else I'm looking forward to in regards to the passing defense and the passing games of both teams. It's a battle of some really good receivers on Saturday. Xavier Legette coming off a 217-yard performance against Jacksonville State on the Vandy side. And, of course, guys, it caused a stir. Some folks cannot comprehend how Vanderbilt could be a push in regards to the wide receiver position. But they got two really good ones. Will Sheppard has 8 touchdowns to his credit this season, and Jaden McGowan is a really nice piece for them on the outside as well. So watching those three guys go to work, Xavier Legette, Will Sheppard, Jaden McGowan, I think going to be a lot of fun, guys. I think you should see the football working through the air all day on Saturday afternoon. Now, guys, speaking of the passing game, speaking of explosive plays, we said this last week. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when for Nick Harbor. And you saw the Gamecocks try to target him downfield, go with that deep shot, right? It was underthrown, unfortunately intercepted. But is this the game? Is this the breakout game for Nicholas Harbor? I think he should get some opportunities, guys. We've been talking this week. Who is the number 2 guy behind Xavier Legette? Because nobody has really stepped up as a consistent week in, week out contributor. And this is the point in the season where you would expect a guy, a youngster, a freshman, really starting to grasp things and really starting to get on a roll. Nick Harbor is that breakout game incoming. Because it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when, and that win very well could be Saturday against Vanderbilt. Guys, on the running game side of things, I think this is a chance for Mario Anderson to pop off and have a big day and run wild. Guys, Vandy defensively, they haven't been able to stop much of anything, right? The pass, the run, you look at the running game, they're giving up 180 yards per game on the ground. Guys, you look at last week. I mean, they played a really bad Auburn offense, and Auburn went up and down the field on them. So when you look at this game, guys, there's really no excuse for South Carolina not to be explosive offensively. There's really no excuse for the Gamecocks to not have somewhat of a field day offensively. I think Mario Anderson could be that guy. He's going to get the bulk of the carries. I think he'll probably touch it 20 to 25 times in that game, if not more. I think you could see Mario Anderson. I think he can go for over $150. I really do. I think he can go for over $150. I think this could be a really, really big day for the South Carolina running game led by Mario Anderson. So going to be interesting to see, especially, by the way, if the weather's not good, are you riding Mario Anderson more than you expected? Is it much more of a run-heavy type of day for the South Carolina offense? Now, switching sides of the football, guys, we saw the Gamecocks generate a turnover defensively for the first time since the Tennessee game in Knoxville, which is right there. That's hard to believe that South Carolina went, 4 games without generating a turnover. Jacksonville State, they finally get one, but they came in bunches. 4 total turnovers for the USC defense in that game, including the big pick six that sealed that thing. Do we see the turnovers continue for the South Carolina defense? Vanderbilt, guys, they are one of the worst in college football at turning the ball over. And if South Carolina is going to make strides defensively down the stretch, I think it's going to have to be turnover aided. The times where we've seen South Carolina, we've seen Clayton White's defense have success in his tenure, it was turnover aided. And so I don't think it's a surprise that you look at last weekend, the reason South Carolina is able to hang on for dear life, they got 4 turnovers. And again, if you're going to win 3 straight, if you're going to win the rest of these games moving forward, you're probably going to have similar performances from the defense. Vanderbilt should give you the opportunity to do that because, again, they've been abysmal at coughing the ball up this season. Going to be a unique challenge for South Carolina on the defensive side of things. Multiple quarterbacks could play in this football game. Ken Seals and A.J. Swan have both played to this point. Both guys, they've been pretty similar, I would say. The quarterback position hasn't been terrible for Vandy. I think it's just more so been them trying some different things, trying to spark something. And I mean, when you're a team as bad as Vandy, you've got to exhaust all options and do everything you can to change something up for the better. So I just wonder, does South Carolina defensively, do they see multiple quarterbacks? Is that something you have to worry about? Does that pose any problems for Clayton White's defense? Because it's one of those things, guys, like you look at Vanderbilt, they've got the 2 weapons on the outside in Shepard and McGowan. A.J. Swan and Ken Seals, guys, both are capable passers of the football, right? They don't run the ball well, 93 yards per game on the ground. They run it even less effectively in SEC play. So, again, it's an unstoppable force against an immovable object. You've got a really, really porous Vandy O against a really, really porous South Carolina D. So, what gives in the football game? Going to be really interesting to see if South Carolina can put something together and have sort of a feel-good game defensively. Guys, on the special team side of things, there's actually a pair of elite punters going at it this weekend. Vanderbilt's punter, one of the best in the business, and of course, Kai Kroger. While he has not been as good as he was last year, Kai Kroger's still been solid for South Carolina. I wonder, though, guys, Beamer ball has been so underwhelming this year. I mean, that fake punt last week was the most desperation, obvious fake we've ever seen. Does Beamer ball at some point snap out of it and make a big play, or is this just is what it is in 2023? You'd like to think that at some point it's going to look like how it did last year. But granted, we're going into what? Game number 10? We're going into game number 10, and South Carolina is who they are. So finally, guys, on that note, you look at this game, Gamecocks and Vanderbilt, and again, guys, South Carolina is a 2-touchdown favorite. I think there's even a greater confidence from the fan base this week in regards to getting a win, finding some joy, if you will, in a victory, not having a miserable existence, as Shane Beamer would say. I think there is a greater belief that's going to happen from the fan base this week versus last week, because last week, guys, you had a confident Jacksonville State team, 7-2, right? Great coach and Rich Rodriguez. They've been playing well. The numbers were flashy. And guys, I think JSU beats Vandy by double digits. I really do. I think Jacksonville State more than likely would have their way. So there was a greater belief this week that South Carolina will hit their stride and play good football. And so that leads me to this. Gamecocks as 2-touchdown favorites against a hapless Vandy team. And a Vandy team, by the way, I say that's dangerous, right? They beat Kentucky and Florida last year. They have a tendency to pop off when nobody's expecting it. But as 2-touchdown favorites, as the supremely talented football team, can South Carolina finally put a complete game together? Offensively, defensively, and special teams. Because the opportunity is going to be there, right? You are more talented than Vandy across the board. Even with some of your deficiencies, some of your weaknesses, you're still more talented than Vanderbilt. And I know right now, these are the two of the worst teams in the SEC, battling it out to stay out of the cellar. But still, guys, this should serve as an opportunity for South Carolina to really build some positive momentum going into the final 2 games. Because, guys, I don't know that you built any positive momentum last weekend. Shane Beamer can spin it how he wants and say that they're all dancing in the locker room celebrating like they won the SEC title, but nobody else is buying that. Nobody else is sitting here saying, like, throw a parade for that win. If you're throwing parades for wins like those, the program's in worse shape than we thought. Getting an SEC win, if you can cover the spread, that'd be great, right? But getting an SEC win, playing a complete game, setting yourself up to really, truly feel good about something and carry confidence into your final 2 matchups against Kentucky and Clemson. That's what this weekend, that's the opportunity that this weekend presents. Will South Carolina take advantage of it? We shall see.